Greetings, I am Gresham and welcome back to Gresham Reads Graceling by Kristen Cashore. Now, in the last chapter, we had experienced Katsa's first bout of rebelliousness against her uncle's command. Something that is honestly respectable. And we also made a unique discovery. Prince Poe has been misrepresenting what his grace is. He is not a fighter, as everyone expected, but instead he is a mind reader. And this has set Katsa off to an extent that, honestly, she feels quite betrayed. So let us see what happens. Now, judging from the time left in the chapter, this one is going to be a very long one, so expect a much longer video this time. Chapter 14. She burst into Raffin's workrooms, and he looked up from his work, startled. "Where is he?" she demanded, and then she stopped in her tracks because he was there, right there, sitting at the edge of Raffin's table, his jaw purple and his sleeve rolled up. "There's something I must tell you, Katsa," he said. "You're a mind reader," she said. "You're a mind reader and you lied to me." Raffin swore and jumped up. He ran to the door behind her and pushed it closed. Poe's face flushed, but he held her gaze. "I'm not a mind reader," he said. "Huh?" "And I am not a fool," she yelled. "So stop lying to me. What have you learned? What thoughts of mine have you stolen?" "I'm not a mind reader," he said. "I sense people." "And what's that supposed to mean? It's people's thoughts that you sense." "No, Katsa, listen. I sense people. Think of it as my night vision, Katsa, or the eyes on the back of my head you've accused me of having. I sense people when they're near me, thinking and feeling and moving around, their bodies, their physical energy. It's only..." He swallowed. "It's only when they're thinking about me that I also sense their thoughts." "And that's not mind reading?" She screamed it so loudly that he flinched, but he still held her gaze. "Alright, it does involve some mind reading, but I can't do what you think I can do." "You lied to me," she said. "I trusted you." Raffin's soft voice broke through her distress. "Let him explain, Katsa." She turned to Raffin, incredulous, flabbergasted that he should know the truth and still take Poe's side. She whirled back on Poe, who still dared to hold her eyes, as if he had done nothing wrong. Nothing completely and absolutely wrong. "Please, Katsa," Poe said. "Please hear me. I can't sit and listen in to whatever thoughts I want. I don't know what you think of Raffin, or what Raffin thinks of Bon, or whether Ol enjoys his dinner. You can be behind the door running in circles and thinking how much you hate Reddit, and all I know is that you're running in circles until your thoughts turn to me. Only then do I know what you're feeling. And this was what it was like to be betrayed by a friend. No, by a traitor pretending to be a friend. Such a wonderful friend he'd seemed. So sympathetic, so understanding. And no wonder if he'd always known her thoughts, always known her feelings. The perfect pretense of friendship. No, he said. No, I have lied, Katsa, but my friendship has not been a pretense. I've always been your true friend. Darkus, seriously? Hey, sorry, I'm having a bit of gas today, so I can't really help it. Stop it, she spat out. Stop it. How dare you, you traitor, imposter. You... She couldn't find words strong enough, but his eyes dropped from hers now, miserably, and she saw that he felt her full meaning. She was cruelly glad his grace communicated to him what she couldn't verbalize. He slumped against the table, his face contorted with unhappiness. His voice, when he spoke, was toneless. Only two people have known this is my grace. My mother and my grandfather. And now Raffen and you. My father does not know, nor my brothers. My mother and my grandfather forbade me to tell anyone. The moment I revealed it to them was as a child. Well, she would take care of that problem. For Gideon was right, though he couldn't have realized why. Poe was not to be trusted. People must know, and she would tell everyone. If you do, Poe said, you'll take away any freedom I have. You'll ruin my life. She looked at him then, but his image was blurred behind tears that had swelled into her eyes. She must leave. She must leave this room because she wanted to hit him, as she had sworn she never would do. She wanted to cause him pain for taking a place in her heart that she wouldn't have given him if she'd known the truth. You lied to me, she said. She turned and ran from the room. Hilda took her damp eyes and her silence in stride. I hope no one is ill, my lady, she said. She sat beside Katsa's bath and worked soap through the knots in Katsa's hair. No one is ill. Then something must have upset you, Hilda said. It'll be one of your young men. One of her young men. One of her friends. Her list of friends was dwindling from few to fewer. I've disobeyed the king, she said. He'll be very angry with me. Yes, Hilda said, but that doesn't account for the pain in your eyes. That will be the doing of one of your young men. Katsa said nothing. Everyone in this castle was a mind reader. Everyone could see through her, and she saw nothing. If the king is angry with you, Hilda said, and if you're having trouble with one of your young men, then we'll make you especially beautiful for the evening. You'll wear your red dress. Katsa almost laughed at that bit of Hilda logic, but that laugh got caught in her throat. She would leave the court after this night, for she didn't want to be here any longer. with her uncle's fury, Gideon's sarcastic hurt pride, and most of all, Poe's betrayal. Later, when Katsa was dressed and Hilda grappled with her wet hair before the fire, there was a knock at her entrance. Katsa's heart flew in her throat, for it would be a steward summoning her to her uncle, or even worse, Poe come to read her mind and hurt her again, with his explanations and his excuses. But when Hilda went to the door, she came back with Raffen. "He's not the one I expected," Hilda said. She folded her arms across her stomach and chuckled. Katsa pressed her fingers to her temples. "I must speak with him alone, Hilda." Hilda left. Raffen sat on her bed and curled his legs up, as he had done when he was a child. As they both had done so many times, sitting together on her bed, talking and laughing. He didn't laugh now, and he didn't talk. He only sat, all arms and legs, and looked at her, in her chair by the fire. His face kind and dear, and open with worry. "That dress suits you, Kat," he said. "Your eyes are very bright." "Hilda imagines that a dress will solve all my problems," Katsa said. "Your problems have multiplied since you last left court. I spoke to Gideon. His very name made her voice tired. "Yes, he told me what happened with Lord Ellis. Honestly, Katsa, it's quite serious, isn't it? What will you do?" "I don't know. I haven't decided. Honestly, Katsa, why do you keep saying that? I suppose you think I should have tortured the fellow for doing no wrong." "Of course not. You did right. Of course you did right. And the king won't control me anymore. I won't be his animal anymore. Kat." He shifted and sighed. He looked at her closely. "I can see you've made up your mind. And you know I'll do anything in my power to stop his hand. I'm on your side in anything you do with Randa. It's just that..." She knew. It was just that Randa paid little heed to his son, the medicine maker. There is very little in Raffen's power to do while his father lived. "I'm worried for you, Kat," he said. "That's all. We all are." Gideon was quite desperate. "Gideon," she sighed. "Gideon proposed marriage to me." "Great hills. Before or after you saw Ellis?" "After. Gideon thinks marriage is the solution to all my problems." Well, how did it go?" "How did it go?" She felt like laughing, though there was no humor in it. "It began badly and progressed to worse," she said. "And it ended with my coming to the realization that Poe is a mind reader and a liar." Raffen considered her a moment. He started to speak, then stopped. His eyes were very gentle. "Dear Katsa," he finally said, "you've had a rough few days. What with Randa and Gideon and Poe." And Poe, the roughest. Though all the danger might lie with Randa. Poe, the wound she would remove, if she could choose to remove one. Randa could never hurt her as Poe had. and they sat quietly. The fire crackled beside her. The fire was a luxury. There was barely a chill in the air. But Hilda had wanted her hair to dry more quickly, so they'd set the great logs burning. Her hair fell now in curls around her shoulders. She pushed it behind her ears and tied it into a knot. His grace has been a secret since he was a child, Cat. Here they came then, the explanations and rationalizations. She looked away from him and braced herself. His mother knew he'd only be used as a tool if the truth came out. Imagine the uses of a child who can sense reactions to things he says, or who knows what someone's doing on the other side of a wall. Imagine his uses when his father is the king. His mother knew he wouldn't be able to relate with people or form friendships, because no one would trust him. No one would want anything to do with him. Think about it, Katsa. Think about what that would be like. She looked up at him then, her eyes on fire and his face softened. What a thing for me to say. Of course you don't need to imagine it. No, for it was her reality. She hadn't had the luxury of hiding her grace. We can't blame him for not telling us sooner, Raffin said. To be honest, I'm touched that he told us at all. He told me just after you left. He has some ideas about the kidnapping, Cat. Yes, as he must have ideas about a great many things he was in no position to know about. A mind reader could never be short on ideas. What are his ideas? Why don't you let him tell you about it? I don't crave the company of a mind reader. He's leaving tomorrow, Cat. She stared at him. What do you mean, he's leaving? He's leaving the court, Raffin said. For good. He's going to Sunder, and then Monsi, possibly. He hasn't worked out the details. Her eyes swam with tears. She seemed unable to control the strange water that flowed into her eyes. She stared at her hands, and one tear plopped into her palm. I think I'll send him, Raffin said, to tell you about it. He climbed from the bed and came to her. He bent down and kissed her forehead. Dear Katsa, he said, and then he left her room. She stared at the checked pattern of her marble floor and wondered how she could feel so desolate that her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't remember crying, not once in her life. Not until this fool Linnet had come to her court and lied to her, and then announced that he was leaving. He hovered just inside the doorway. He seemed unsure whether to come closer or keep his distance. She didn't know what she wanted either. She only knew she wanted to remain calm and not look at him, and not to think any thoughts for him to steal. She stood, crossed into her dining room, went to the window and looked out. The courtyard was empty, and yellow in the light of the lowering sun. She felt him moving into the entrance behind her. Forgive me, Katsa, he said. I beg you to forgive me. Well, and that was easily answered. She did not forgive him. The trees in Renda's garden were still green, and some of the flowers still in bloom. But soon the leaves would turn and fall. The gardeners would come with their great rakes and scrape the leaves from the marbled floor and carry them away in wheelbarrows. She didn't know where they carried them. To the vegetable gardens, she guessed, or to the fields. They were industrious, the gardeners. She did not forgive him. She heard him move a step closer. How? How did you know? If you would tell me, he asked. She rested her forehead on the glass pane. Why don't you use your grace to find the answer to that? He paused. I could, he said. Possibly, if you're thinking about it specifically. But you're not. And I can't wander around inside you and retrieve any information I want. Any more than I can stop my grace from showing me things I don't want. She didn't answer. Katsa, right, all I know right now is that you're angry, furious from the top of your head to your toes, and that I've hurt you and that you don't forgive me, or trust me. That is all I know at this moment, and my grace only confirms what I see with my own eyes. She sighed sharply and spoke into the window pane. Gideon told me he didn't trust you. And when he told me, he used the same words you used before. The same words exactly. And she waved her hand in the air. There were other hints, but Gideon's words made it clear. He was closer now, leaning against the table, most likely with his hands in his pockets, and his eyes on her back. She focused on the view outside. Two ladies crossed the courtyard below her, on each other's arms. The curls of their hair sat gathered at the top of their heads and bobbed up and down. I haven't been very careful with you, he said, careful to hide it. I'd go so far as to say I've been careless at times. He paused, and his voice was quiet, as if he was talking down to his boots. It's because I've wanted you to know. And that did not absolve him. He had taken her thoughts without telling her, and he had wanted to tell her. And that did not begin to absolve him. I couldn't tell you, Katsa. Not possibly, he said, and she swung around to face him. Stop it. Stop that. Stop responding to my thoughts. I won't hide it from you, Katsa. I won't hide it anymore. He wasn't leaning against the table, hands in pocket. He was standing, clutching his hair. His face. She would not look at his face. She turned away and turned back to the window. I'm not going to hide it from you anymore, Katsa, he said again. Please, let me explain it. It's not as bad as you think. It's easy for you to say. You're the one whose thoughts are not your own. You're not the one whose thoughts are not your own. Almost all of your thoughts are your own, he said. My grace only shows me how you stand in relation to me. Where you are nearby physically, and what you are doing. Any thoughts, or feelings, or instincts you have regarding me. I suppose it's meant to be a kind of self-preservation, he finished lamely. Anyway, it's why I can fight you. I can sense the movement of your body without seeing it. And more to the point, I feel the energy of your intention towards me. I know your every move you intend to make against me before you make it. Excuse me. She almost couldn't breathe at that extraordinary statement. She wondered vaguely if this was how it felt to be her victims. How it felt to her victims to be kicked in the chest. I know when someone wants to hurt me and how, he said. I know if a person looks on me kindly, or if he trusts me. I know if a person doesn't like me. I know when someone intends to deceive me. As you've deceived me, she said, about being a mind reader. He continued doggedly. Yes, that's true. But all you've told me about your struggles with Randa, Katsa, I needed to hear from your mouth. All you've told me about Raffen or Gideon. When I met you in Murgon's court, he said, do you remember? When I met you, I didn't know why you were there. I couldn't look into your mind and know you were in the process of rescuing my grandfather from Murgon's dungeons. I wasn't even sure my grandfather was in the dungeons, for I hadn't gotten close enough to him to sense his physical presence yet. Nor had I spoken with Murgon. I'd learned nothing yet from Murgon's lies. I didn't know you'd attack every guard in the castle. All I knew for sure was that you didn't know who I was, and you didn't know whether to trust me, but you didn't want to kill me because I was a Lynid, and possibly because of something to do with some other Lynid, though I couldn't be certain who or how he factored into it, and also that you, I don't know how to explain it, but you felt trustworthy to me. That's all I knew. It was on that basis of that information that I decided to trust you. It must be convenient, she said bitterly, to know if another person is trustworthy. We wouldn't be here now if I had that capability. I'm sorry. I can't tell you how sorry. I've hated not telling you. It's rankled me every day since we became friends. We are not friends, she whispered into the glass of the window. If you're not my friend, then I have no friends. Friends don't lie, she said. Friends try to understand. How could I become your friend without lying? How much have I risked to tell you and Raffen the truth, Katsa? If this was your grace and your secret, hidden yourself in a hole and what would you have done differently, Katsa, if this was your grace and your secret? Hidden yourself in a hole and dared to burden no one with your grievous friendship? I will have friends, Katsa. I will have a life, even though I carry this burden. He stopped for a moment, his voice rough and choked. And Katsa fought against his distress, fought to keep it from touching her. She found that she was gripping the window frame very hard. You would have me friendless, Katsa, he finished quietly. You would have my grace control every aspect of my life and shut me off from every happiness. She didn't want to hear these words, words that called to her sympathy, to her understanding. She who had hurt so many with her own grace, and been reviled because of it. She who still struggled to keep her grace from mastering her, and who, like him, had never asked for the power it gave her. Yes, I didn't ask for this, he said. I would turn it off for you if I could. Rage then, rage again, because she couldn't even feel sympathy without him knowing it. This was madness. She could not comprehend the madness of this situation. How did his mother relate to him? Or his grandfather? How could anyone? She took a breath and tried to consider it piece by piece. You're fighting, she said, her eyes on the darkening courtyard. You expect me to believe your fighting isn't graced. I'm an exceptional natural fighter, he said. All of my brothers are. The royal family is well known in Leyden for hand fighting, but my grace... it's an enormous advantage in a fight. To anticipate every move your opponent makes against you, combined with that my immediate sense of your body, a sense that goes beyond sight. You can understand why no one has ever beaten me, save you. She thought about that, and found she couldn't believe it. But you're too good. You must have a fighting grace as well. You couldn't fight me so well if you didn't. Katsa, he said, think about it. You're 5 times the fighter I am. When we fight, you're holding back. Don't tell me you aren't, because I know you are. And I'm not holding back. Not a bit. You can do anything you want to me, and I can't hurt you. It hurts when you strike me. It only hurts you for an instant. And besides, if I hit you, it's only because you've let me. Because you're too busy wrenching my arm out of its socket to care that I'm hitting you in the stomach. How long do you think it would take you to kill me or break my bones if you decided to? If she truly decided to, he was right. If her purpose were to hurt him, to break his arm or neck, she didn't think it would take her very long. When we fight, he said, you go to great pains to win without hurting me. That you usually can is a mark of your phenomenal skill. I've never hurt you once, and believe me, I've tried. It's a front, she said. The fighting is only a front. Yes. My mother seized on it in an instant. It became clear that I shared the skill of my brothers, and that my grace magnified that skill. Why didn't you know I would strike you? She said, in Murgon's courtyard. I did know, but only in the last instant, and I didn't react quickly enough. Until that first strike, I didn't realize your speed. I'd never encountered the like of it before. The mortar was cracking in the frame of the window. She pulled out a small chunk and rolled it between her fingers. Does your grace make mistakes, or are you always right? He breathed. It almost sounded like a laugh. It's not always exact, and it's always changing. I'm still growing into it. My sense of the physical is pretty reliable, as long as I'm not in an enormous crowd. I know where people are and what they're doing, but what they feel towards me. There's never been a time when I thought someone was lying and they weren't. Or a time when I thought someone intended to hit me and they didn't. There are times when I'm not sure. When I have a sense of someone, but I'm not sure. Other people's feelings can be very complicated and difficult to understand. She hadn't thought of that a person might be difficult to understand even to a mind reader. I'm more sure of things now than I used to be, he said. When I was a child, I was rarely sure. These enormous waves of energy and feeling and thought were always crashing into me. And most of the time, I was drowning in them. For one thing, it's taken me a long time to learn to distinguish between thoughts that matter and thoughts that don't. Thoughts that are just thoughts, fleeting, and thoughts that carry some kind of relevant intent. I've gotten much better at that, but my grace still gives me things I have no idea what to do with. It sounded ridiculous to her, thoroughly ridiculous. And she had thought her own grace overwhelming. Alongside his, it seemed quite straightforward. It's hard to get a handle on it sometimes, he said, my grace. She turned sideways for a moment. Did you say that because I thought it? No, I said it because I thought it. She turned back to the window. I thought it too, she said, or something like it. Well, he said, I imagine it's a feeling you would understand. She sighed again. There were things about this she could understand, though she didn't want to. How close do you have to be to someone, physically, for your grace to sense them? It differs, and it changes over time. What do you mean? If it's someone I know well, he said, my range is broad. For strangers, I need to be close. I knew when you neared the castle today. I knew when you burst into the courtroom and leapt out of your saddle, and I felt your anger strong and clear as you flew up to Raffin's rooms. My range for you is broader than most. It was darker outside now than it was in her dining room. She saw him suddenly in the reflection of the window. He was leaning back against the table, as she had pictured him before. His face, his shoulders, his arms sagged. Everything about him sagged. He was unhappy. He was looking down at his feet, but as she watched him, he raised his eyes and met hers in the glass. She felt the tears again, suddenly, and she grasped at something to say. Do you sense the presence of animals and plants, rocks and dirt? I am leaving, he said, tomorrow. Do you know when an animal is near? Will you turn around, he said, so I can see while we speak? Can you read my mind more easily when I'm facing you? No, I'd just like to see you, Katsa. That's all. His voice was soft and sorry. He was sorry about all of this. Sorry for his grace. His grace that was not his fault. And that would have driven her away had he told her of it at the beginning. She turned to face him. I didn't used to sense animals and plants or landscapes, he said. But lately that's been changing. Sometimes I'll get a fuzzy sense of something that isn't human. If something moves, I might sense it. It's erratic. Katsa watched his face. I'm going to Sunder. Katsa folded her arms across her stomach and said nothing. When Mergen questioned me after your rescue, it became obvious to me that the object you'd taken was my grandfather. It became just as obvious that Mergon had been keeping him for someone else, but I couldn't tell who, not without asking questions that would have given away what I knew. She listened vaguely. He was tired. She was tired, overwhelmed by too many things in the present to focus on the details of the kidnapping. I'm beginning to think it's something to do with Monsey, he said. We rolled out Midlands, Wester, Nander, Estel, and Sunder. And you'll remember, I've been to most of those courts. I know I was not lied to, except in Sunder. Lynid is not responsible, I'm sure of it. She'd lost her fury somewhere as they talked. She didn't feel it anymore. She wished she did, because she preferred it to the emptiness that had settled in its place. She was sorry for everything that had changed now with Poe. Sorry to see it all go. Katsa, he said, I need you to listen to me. But she blinked and worked her mind back to the words he had spoken. But King Lek of Monsieur is a kind man, she said. He would have no reason. He might, he said, though I don't know what it is. Something isn't right, Katsa. Some impression I got from Mergon that I dismissed at the time. Perhaps I dismissed them in error. My father's sister, Queen Ashen, she wouldn't behave as you told me. She's so stoical. She is strong. She wouldn't have hysterics and lock herself and her child away from her husband. I swear to you, if you knew her. He stopped, his brow furrowed. He kicked the floor. I have a feeling Monsey has something to do with it. I don't know if it's my grace or just my instinct. Anyway, I'm going back to Sunder to see what I can learn of it. father's doing better, but for his own sake, I want him to stay hidden until I get to the bottom of this. That was it then. He was going to Sunder to get to the bottom of it. And it was good that he was going, for she didn't want him in her head. But neither did she want him to go. And he must know that, since she had thought it. And now, did he know that she knew that he knew, since she had thought that too? That was absurd. This was absurd. It was impossible. Being with him was impossible. But still, she didn't want him to go. I hoped you would come with me, he said, and she stared at him, open-mouthed. We'd make a good team. I don't know where I'm going, for sure, but I hoped you would consider coming, if you're still my friend. She couldn't think what to say. Doesn't your grace tell you if I'm your friend? Do you know yourself? She tried to think, but there was nothing in her mind. She knew only that she was numb and sad, and completely without any clarity of feeling. I can't know your feelings, he said, if you don't know them yourself. Are you alright, Darkus? Yeah. More phlegm buildup. God, I hate my congestion and sinuses sometimes. I can imagine. It does seem irritating. He looked to the door suddenly, and then there was a knock, and a steward burst in without waiting for Katsa's response. At the sight of his pale, tight face, it all came flooding back to her. Randa. Randa wanted to see her. Most likely wanted to kill her. Before this confusion with Poe, she had disobeyed Randa. The king orders you to come before him at once, my lady, the steward said. Forgive me, my lady. He says that if you don't, he'll send his entire guard to fetch you. Very well, Katsa said. Tell him I'll go to him immediately. Thank you, my lady. The steward turned and scampered away. Katsa scowled after him. His entire guard. What does he think they could do to me? I should have told the steward to send them, just for the amusement of it. She looked around the room. I wonder if I should take a knife. Poe watched her with narrowed eyes. What have you done? What is this about? I've disobeyed him. He sent me to torture some poor innocent lord, and I decided I wouldn't. Do you think I should take a knife? She walked across to her weapons room. He followed her. To do what? What do you think will happen at this meeting? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, Poe, if he angers me, I fear I'll want to kill him. And what if he threatens me and gives me no choice? She threw herself into a chair and dropped her head down onto the council table. How could she go to Renda now, of all times, when there was a whirlwind in her head? She would lose herself at the sound of his voice. She would do something dreadful. Poe slid into the chair next to her and sat sideways, facing her. Katsa, he said, listen to me. You're the most powerful person I've ever met. You can do whatever you want in the world. No one can make you do anything, and your uncle can't touch you. The instant you walk into his presence, you have all the power. If you wish not to hurt him, Katsa, then you only have to choose not to. But what will I do? You'll figure it out, Poe said. You only have to go in knowing what you won't do. You won't hurt him. You won't let him hurt you. You'll figure out the rest as you go along. She sighed into the table. She didn't think much of his plan. It's the only possible plan, Katsa. You have the power to do whatever you want. She sat up and turned to him. You keep saying that, but it's not true. I don't have the power to stop you from sensing my thoughts. He raised his eyebrows. You could kill me. I couldn't, she said, for you would know I meant to kill you, and you'd escape me. You'd stay far away from me, always. But I wouldn't. You would, she said. If I wished to kill you, I wouldn't. On that senseless note, she threw her arms into the air. Enough. Enough of this. She stood up from the table and marched out of her apartment to answer the king's call. Forgive me for that. Well, that was chapter 14. And it appears that they may be reconciling, but we will have to wait and see if they truly do or not. I will admit, Poe's grace is interesting. The ability to sense what the intent, thoughts, and feelings of those around you towards you. I wonder how he would feel if he encountered myself. It will be interesting. But I believe I will call it here. Recording has been going on for nearly 50 minutes. So yes. And also another thing I'm curious is what will happen when Katsa goes to confront her uncle. It is interesting to think, will she give in to her anger, or will she overcome it? I do not know, but we will have to wait and see, I suppose. Anyways, this will be the end, so if you enjoyed this chapter, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below, telling your favorite part. Also, if you enjoy the content that we produce on this channel, be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you know when I'm reading the next chapter. I will see you all in the next video. Now I am Gresham, and I am signing out.